Hello, and welcome to a special collaboration edition of the Blue Monday podcast. My name is Craig Fimbo, and I'm joined by two special guests today. Viewers on YouTube will see that our good friend Phil Ham of TWTD has joined us for this special pod. Hi, Phil. How are you? How are things going?
All right. Yes. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. And now let me introduce the third person on the pod, or should I say the third lion on the pod, co-founder and co-owner of Phoenix Rising and co-owner of Ipswich Town Football Club, and also, I quote here, the most popular and connected guy that Brett Johnson knows, Mr. Mark Detmer. How are you, Mark?
Hey, great. Good morning, good afternoon to you. Those are big shoes to fill from Brett Johnson, but with all humility, I appreciate his kind words.
Now we know your time's precious. We know we're the first of very, very many similar calls you've got booked today. So thanks firstly for sparing us your time. Hopefully the questions won't be too repetitive, and we can cover some new ground and keep it interesting on your behalf. So most importantly, first and foremost, how are you? How are the family? How are things going over there?
They're doing great. Thanks so much for asking. Celebrated Mother's Day with my mom and my wife and our kids, and then this morning was get the kids up, showered, dressed, and off to school, and my cup of coffee here to catch up with you both. But it's a wonderful morning. How are things over there?
Yeah, all right. Actually, yeah, it's nice and bright and sunny. Went out for a little walk today. The temperatures are slowly rising. You know, we're almost at the heady 61, I think you'd probably call it in your neck of the woods. So probably about 40 degrees lower than what you guys are used to. But yeah, things are slightly warming up over here. You must have been impressed with the first couple of Phoenix results that you've had the last couple of weekends.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they're pretty impressive. Was it 4-1 victory over San Diego, 3-0 victory over Oakland? It's a start to hopefully a great season in a new stadium, as I think you guys have covered that we've grown, and we can talk more about how the genesis of all that. But couldn't be more pleased with Coach Rick Johnson, Bobby Dooley, and collectively the team over at Phoenix Rising producing results early in the season that we hope to carry all the way. They said early that it's not about the first win, it's the last win, right? We want to get that last win of the season.
Well, I think you've got a handful of extra fans watching it over here on YouTube, and they seem to be streaming both live and replay, the full match replay, so people can catch up with the results and bits and pieces like that. So just before Phil gets into his Larry King impression, and we get into the weeds of everything, how did you form your relationship, an obvious friendship with Brett and Berkay?
Oh wow, we go back. Berkay and I met going back to the children. Our sons were in first grade together, and they were a new family to our school, and we immediately took to them. Our sons becoming good friends, our daughters becoming good friends, our wives becoming good friends, and so for Berkay and I, it was really natural. We just clicked right away, and we both had a passion for football, for soccer. And then in a trip here to Los Angeles, I had the good fortune of meeting Brett Johnson. A mutual friend had recommended we get together. And I was meeting that friend for breakfast, and up walks Brett Johnson and says, "Are you Mark Detmer?" And I said, "I am." He said, "Great, I'm here for the breakfast." I'm like, "Okay, great." And so Brett, he claims that he crashed our breakfast. And again, some of this you may have heard, but he was the partner in Arizona United, the predecessor club to Phoenix Rising. And at that point, we're looking for some new investors to come in, some new life, some new energy to the club. So I sat down to breakfast with Brett, and at the end of that breakfast, called Berkay, and Berkay and I started talking about this opportunity. And at the end of the call, Berkay said, "Are you going to be investing in it?" And I said, "I am." He said, "Okay, then I'll meet with them." And we all sat down. Now there's obviously twists and turns along the way, and one of them was, Brett said, "Hey, Arizona United's coming to Orange County. They're going to be playing at Anteater Stadium at UC Irvine. Why don't you come down with the family?" And I said, "Okay, there'll be 4 of us. Is that okay with the tickets?" And Brett said, "As long as it's less than 700, it'll be no problem." Said, "Yeah, it won't be anywhere near there." So my wife and my kids, we get up, we head down there on a Saturday, and my wife's like, "What are we doing?" And I said, "Oh, we're looking at this club. We're looking at Arizona United." And she said, "Why are we looking at that?" And I said, "To possibly make an investment in the club." So we drive down. We pull up, we sit on these concrete blocks in the sun in the afternoon. And she's sitting there looking at me and looking at the play on the pitch and just totally bewildered. So it's Brett Johnson, his two older kids, Monica and John McPherson, and the bus driver. So those were the away fans for the match. And then the OC Blues fans, I think at that time were drawing about 80 people. And my wife looks over at me and she says, I don't get it. What are we doing here? And I said, we're going to look to buy the club. She goes, but there's nobody here. And I said, I know, that's the opportunity. I go, if it was packed, there wouldn't be an opportunity for us to bring any value. And she paused, she's puzzled. And she looks at me and she says, if you're having a midlife crisis, just go buy a Ferrari. Like, what are we doing? And I said, no, honey, this can work. We can rebrand it. We can move the stadium to the right location. We can draw in fans by bringing this really positive culture to a city like Phoenix that deserves to have that highest level of professional sports. And from there on, Phoenix Rising was born. So many partners in the club that have considerable time, energy, effort, and capital invested into the success there. But that's a lot of the roadmap that I think Brett and Berke and myself and collectively our partner want to see at Ipswich.
I was just going to say that you see parallels with the situation currently at town that you saw at Phoenix. But on a bigger scale. That's right. A much bigger scale. You know, it's taken us 3 years for Berke and Brett and I to get here. We started this journey after Phoenix Rising was up and running, if you will. I mean, there's always, just like steering a car, you've got to make corrections along the road. But we said we really want to get into English football. And we started our journeys to London and to many cities throughout the country in review, and we made a lot of relationships, and we've been able to hopefully, again, create some parallels between the beautiful town of Ipswich and Suffolk and the parallels to Phoenix and the family support and people in the town that are so passionate about their team. That's very similar to a lot of the things that we've done in Phoenix.
What sort of lessons have you learned from setting up Phoenix from the Phoenix from the Flames, and what can you bring over to Ipswich?
I think it's culture more than anything. You know, I think the energy that the three of us are bringing to the club starts to translate to, as you know, with Mark Ashton and our president and CEO, and how the front office is going to run, and our expectations with Paul Cook, who was our first choice after acquisition of the club, and thankfully he was also Marcus Evans's first choice as a manager, and then starting to design that style of play. But along the way, I mean, who are we? What are we without the fans? And so engaging with the fans is something that's really important to Brett and to Berke and myself, and creating a better fan experience. It won't happen overnight. I don't want people to have unrealistic expectations. We would all like it to happen overnight. These things take time, just like it took time for the club to go from Premier League to Championship and Championship to League One. It will take us brick by brick time to build back the club, both with the play on the pitch, which is our first and foremost. And as you know, there's so much happening right now between the manager and the players, and so much of what we want to do to get the performance that we'd all hope and expect on the pitch.
You mentioned about relationships and building relationships with people in English football. How was the relationship with Mike O'Leary and Mark Ashton, Bill? Brett, I heard talking about you hearing Mark Ashton at a USL chairman's meeting or something along those lines.
That's right. Yes, and along those lines, on our many trips to the UK, we were introduced to Mike O'Leary, and Mike O'Leary's role was paramount to the success of the acquisition of Ipswich. I mean, Mike was working tirelessly. His background, as you know, with West Brom, he had the pedigree of running a Premier League club before. He's been in private equity, and he's handled mergers and acquisitions of companies, and his skill set was exactly what we were looking for in having a partner there locally, again, with the experience and knowledge and the ability to execute our plan to, acquire the club, Ipswich Town Football Club. But then Mark Ashton was exactly who we were looking for as a trusted advisor, as a president and CEO of the club. I think that those two were really big keys for us. It's not about just being U.S. investors and coming over and buying a club. It's about how do we execute our vision for that club, and we needed them as much as I think they needed us and wanted us to be partners.
I think that's something that people have welcomed, because
I would guess there'd probably be a lot more. There'd have been suspicion about, a US group suddenly coming into League One football and expecting to have success, whereas you've got this. You're in tandem with people who know the English game inside out.
That's right. Well said. So no, we think we bring a different perspective to the boardroom, to leadership, to culture, to fan engagement, to the ability to hopefully engage the children. I think when we closed on the club, with all humility, there was reach from far and wide. To me personally, to Brett, to Berke, and our group, just thanking us for our involvement, thanking us for our interest in the club, and trying to hopefully get the club back to where its former glory was. But with that, what was missing, the stories were constantly about 1981, 1978, honestly, 40 years ago. And it was very hard to find a young fan that reached out to us saying that, wow, I can remember in 2012 when they got this victory. There's been this whole lost generation or era of fan that we want to engage. I think that's really a big part of our strategy to help bringing the energy back into the club, which again transfers onto the pitch.
You say, sorry, Phil. I was going to say, because I've got a 13-year-old boy who's, has a season ticket. He's had a season ticket for 6-7 years. And as you say, if I asked him to name his half a dozen favourite games, he probably struggled to fill two fingers of one hand. It's been that starved. And it's saying not necessarily for a 13-year-old, it's also the same for the guys who are, almost getting into their 20s now. It's just been just starved of success. But I think what you said about fan engagement, I think you may well have become a little bit overwhelmed. Certainly, I think Brett and Berke on Twitter just being this tidal wave of thank yous, whether that's a combination of being starved of success and also being starved of any real interaction with the higher echelons within the club. For whatever reason, it was decided that wasn't the way the previous owner wanted to go. But I think you can probably tell from the level of interaction that you've had and the level of requests and messages and bits and pieces you've had that there is a decent sized club with a very decent sized following that's just waiting for something to happen, for the fuse to be lit, if you like.
No, that's right. Well said. So I opened a Twitter account in April. I didn't have one, and I had to create, if you will, this account so that we could capture some of that additional fan engagement, and the fans have been wonderful. And again, what we hope to do in our own personal expectations is to deliver on all that positive energy.
And come back to the deal. You talk about Marcus Evans and the deal with Marcus Evans. Fairly nervy period for you whilst it was all being done and dusted, because I heard it was sort of on and it was off and then it was back on, and someone even suggested even in the last couple of days up to it being done, it was still, there was still a kind of question whether it would be done or not.
Oh, there was definitely questions of whether it had been done or not. It was very unnerving. We'd spent more than a year in conversations, and not because the parties didn't wish to progress. We had this whole thing called the quarantine and COVID and everything that hit right in the middle of our talks. And so we hit the pause button on purpose, tried to figure out what things were going to look like when we came out. And thankfully and gracefully, we are coming out. As you all know, the numbers continue to get better, but that was a big reason why we had to pause for a moment. But up until the end, it was definitely Mike O'Leary and Marcus Evans talking on the daily, in resolving any minor little tweaks and things that needed to happen in order to close. But I'm a little bit superstitious. You saw Berke and Brett immediately with their hats and their scarves and stuff. I waited until it closed. I told my wife, she's like, I want to order these things. And I said, hold on, let's close and then we'll progress with ordering merchandise. But now we've got, I don't know, there's been like a shipment a day at this point with the merchandise. But it was very nervy at times. We were committed to the club and to the acquisition. And so, again, along the way, you make concessions, but it's the right thing to do in order to see your goal and to get to where we are today.
Sorry, go on, Phil.
Sorry, so Arizona's public safety personnel retirement system. I've got it written down because I'm not remember a name that long. The pension fund owns 90% of Game Changer. How did they get involved?
Through relationships, like anybody and anything. And of course, at this point, there's only so much I can say about that. But they're great partners of ours. They're committed to see the project through. They have capital. We have capital to commit, but it's not just about capital. It's not, as you've seen. I mean, and Marcus is very passionate about the club and was very passionate and spent a lot of money on the club, and it didn't yield the results that you all would have liked to have seen. And so it's not just about capital, but PSPRS brings capital to the table, as well as partnership and again, at this point, culture. And those are the things that we're really hitting on and connecting in the community.
Because it's not that unusual, is it, for pension funds to have involvement in sports clubs in North America? I was reading about the Ontario Teachers Pension Fund and the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's a similar sort of arrangement, isn't it?
That's right, and it's not uncommon. So maybe we're trendsetters, right? That you might see more of this type of a transaction going forward.
And their expectations, obviously, profit is clearly their expectation. But I think people's concerns about a pension fund with profit being its ultimate aim is the time scale. Presumably, they're not on a particularly tight time scale to kind of make their money back and more.
No, that's the nice thing about pension funds. Their time horizon is very, very long. It's not about trying to come in like certain groups maybe that try to just, I hate to say, make a quick buck. That's not a good characterization, but try to turn something really quick. They're not at all like that. They're very much aligned with us that we need to create the building blocks to go up to championship, and at that point build the club and the support and the stadium and everything around going then to the Premier League. And they're aligned with us with that mission and that vision, but they have a very, very long time horizon associated with it.
Because I think that's one of the sort of fans that, new owners come in at clubs and expect to be from League One to the Premier League in 2 years, which is just unrealistic, isn't it?
It's unrealistic. As much as we'd all love to see that happen, it's not, right? Again, going back to that, it's taken decades to end up back in League One. It will take time for us to get back to championship, and then hopefully again our vision to be in the Premier League.
And I was going to ask about the boards and the way that the kind of things work, because I think there's the Ipswich Town Limited board, which I think is Mark Andrews, Mike O'Leary, and Burkay, and then there's a Game Changer board, which is I think the three of you. Mike O'Leary and Ed Schwartz from ORG.
Correct.
And then Mark Ashton running the day-to-day. How is the kind of interaction between those sort of boards and Mark Ashton going to be?
Well, I guess the question is, and I don't know if you've served on many boards, but this board is clearly not hostile. We're aligned in our vision and our mission in order to get the club back up to where it belongs in its former glory. And so, no, our interactions have been phenomenal. We candidly text and send messages and set up calls, and we all like each other, which makes it a lot more fun. And again, I think that may end up translating into the success of the club. And I've sat on boards that don't function well, and in organizations in general, that doesn't have to even be a board, that the people that aren't aligned or they don't see things, in a similar way, and then the results get muddled, and and it's not what anyone would hope for, and people get frustrated, and you head the wrong direction. I couldn't tell you that this board is not like that at all. This board, we have people that are very genuine. They work tirelessly. We're all considering the amount of time, energy, effort, and money we want to contribute for the success of the club.
So it's kind of day to day. You'll all be interacting with Mark Ashton, with Mike O'Leary over here. So
we interact quite frequently, especially right now, as you can imagine. The emails are practically daily, and we have a number of calls. But the best news for us, and what gives all of us comfort on the board, is Mark Ashton's leadership. He's phenomenal at what he does, and in his vision for the club, and the right people to see through that vision. And so we sleep well at night knowing that Mark Ashton's there at the helm.
And the PLC, the PLC at Town, the remaining 12.5% of the old shareholders. I think from what I gather, you're quite comfortable with that remaining part of the club, because it's fan involvement. Obviously, that kind of fits in with your sort of community aspect of the club. Would you ever kind of any thoughts on representation of the board from PLC or anything like that?
That I can't comment on, but we were thrilled that they stayed in. right? They had an option, tag along and drag along, and we had lots of conversations about what that may or may not look like. And we're thrilled that they wanted to stay in for this journey with us to come along, because again, what is a club without its fans, without its community? I mean, that's what we take so seriously in all this, is that we are a representative of the community in the way that we handle ourselves, the way that we treat others, the way that we commit to the project and the club's performance overall. So we're thrilled that the community wanted to stay in as our partners.
And what have you done at Phoenix then that you think you can, to engage the community in that way that you think you can replicate at Town?
There's some things at Phoenix, I think, again, some things will translate through football. Others may be just slightly different in community. But we've engaged with the children. I think that's something that we need to do. And you saw that the U19 tickets that we offered them up for free, which was a way to hopefully draw in some of the younger fans. I know I'll be traveling as soon as acceptable, obviously due to restrictions with my family, to come to Ipswich, and we want to get, again, more engaged there. And I think that's an area that we can definitely help. A couple other areas, obviously performance is at the top of it, and that involves training, that involves nutrition, that involves recovery, that involves so many other aspects of the player other than just their pace or their foot skills, right? There's a lot that goes into call it formational that we've done, I think, a phenomenal job in Phoenix of and give Rick Shantz all the credit for creating a program that kept our players healthy through the season. That identifying the right talent, which Mark Ashton and collectively the team are really good at, but then finding a way to keep them healthy and on the pitch, because those are long seasons. There's a lot of matches that their bodies take a lot of abuse, as you know, and it's all about recovery. And I think those are a couple of things that we can bring that we've learned in Phoenix. Hopefully that some of that, again, new science and technology around nutrition and recovery.
And the women's game, I mean, that's another community aspect. It's obviously a sort of lower level at Ipswich at the moment. Is that something that you're going to be kind of concentrating on as well? Oh,
absolutely. Football's for everyone. I think that's got to be a common theme and goal, not around just English football, but global football. And we're very, very supportive of the women's team, and any way that we can help support their efforts, I think we're all in on.
Just in terms, sorry, Phil. Just in terms of, we talk about timescales and bits and pieces and return on investment and stuff like that. Some fans might be expecting cash to be thrown at this from the very beginning, but how can you give us a bit more detail on what the strategy is, short to medium term, and how that, because salaries related to income, there's only a percentage you can spend. If it would be nice if people could throw the money on it, but how can you sweat the asset that is Portman Road?
I think initially, in real football fans understand financial fair play, and they understand how that relates to ticket sales. And without ticket sales, you have no player wages. And so there was some people talking about ticket sales, but a lot of that ties back to financial fair play. And in that, we have to give Paul Cook the resources that he needs to produce the results that we expect. And so a big part of that will be contributing not only dollars, obviously, to acquire the club, which has virtually no debt on it anymore, but also contributing the working capital this year, which we've already fully funded, so that we can go out and as you said, through transfers, loans, whatever, pick up the right players on the pitch. Not that the players that just completed their season were the wrong players. It's just a matter of finding the players that fit Paul Cook's system out on the pitch, so that he can get all the resources necessary for him to be successful in his role.
In terms of like Mark Ashton's involvement, as you said, presumably part of his remit will be to utilise the stadium and the ground more so than it is just on a Saturday to Saturday basis. Presumably we can see it used more during the week, just to bring in a bit more cash into the club that way.
Yeah, through commercial. So you touched on it, and you hadn't asked about Ed Sheeran yet, but that's exciting news, right? That we're able to partner up with Ed Sheeran and collectively his team as fronted jersey sponsor. It's a very cryptic, sign, which Ed says will all make sense here soon. But we couldn't be more thrilled. I mean, he's a Suffolk, person, and with that, his support of the club has been undying as a fan. And so driving commercial is a big part of, and hopefully we can bring some of that commercial that we've, again, learned through Phoenix Rising and through relationships we have in the UK and or even US companies looking to go to the UK, drive that commercial part of the revenue as well.
Were you aware that was in the pipeline when you were having the discussions, takeover discussions?
We were made aware,
Yeah,
along the way. And again, we couldn't be more thrilled. I mean, Ed has such a global following and for good reason. He's extremely talented, maybe the best songwriter of our era. I wouldn't say ever, because, you know, there were some pretty good guys like John Lennon and Paul McCartney and some others out of the UK that are pretty good songwriters as well. But of our era, he is one of the best songwriters. And again, I think driving commercial is as equally important to having the dollars available to get the players necessary to get the results we expect.
I was going to ask you about financial fair play, and have you been getting your head around the SCMP and all these kind of sort of arcane football League One rules?
I am, but my knowledge level is just dangerous. It's not. We rely on those experts to help us with that, led by Mark Ashton. I only know enough to be dangerous on the topic.
But I mean, that obviously limits the amount of cash you can inject in a season, doesn't it?
That's why ticket sales are very important as well.
What about other things? I mean, there's other ways of doing this, aren't there? There's sort of equity and things like that. There's ways. Is that something that you've considered? Is being considered?
At this point, I don't believe so. At least we haven't discussed it at the board level. But again, I think that we turn a lot of that over to Mark Ashton and his stewardship to help us navigate what we need to do for financial fair play and there's so many other rules obviously associated with English football that they are so well versed on that I am definitely not the right person to ask about that. They have their careers in it, so I'll defer to them.
And when you look at Phoenix Rising's webpage and you look at the investors there, there's a lot of investors there. Is that something that you would look to do here eventually? More and more people come on board going forward?
I think that time will tell. We've been open, obviously, Phoenix Rising being the case study, to those that are aligned with us. Again, capital being part of it, but the culture, the desire to win, the amount of time, energy, and effort they want to contribute as owners as well, is all part of the equation. Because at a certain point, capital starts to become a commodity. That's not what we're looking for, right? In a partner, we want a partner that helps us see our vision through to the goal of eventually, obviously, being in the Premier League again. So, we haven't ruled it out. I'll say that. Right now we're fully funded and well capitalized, but at some point in the future, it may make sense.
But it wouldn't be just money coming in for the sake of money coming in. It would have to be the right people. Yeah.
You're exactly right.
Yeah. And in Portman Road, I know there's a lot of talk about the kind of infrastructure at Portman Road being a bit, seen better days. Needs a little bit of tidying up. Prepared to spend the money on that and prepared to money on the training ground as well. That's
right. And again, I think it's brick by brick, right? I don't want to set an unrealistic expectation that day one they're walking into a new stadium, right? But could we fix a turnstile? Could we paint here? Could we do some things to clean it up? Absolutely, right? And then look to the future for future capital funding and projects. We've heard about the scoreboard. We've heard about some different things that will require additional capital. But again, I go back to that. We've got to get the performance on the pitch, and then those things, as you progress and you start to re-engage with the fans, you start to drive attendance numbers up because it's a must-see event. When we are allowed to go back to events fully. In a safe manner, I think that spending on the stadium will be all part of that plan and enhancing the fan experience at the end of the day.
You can't wait to get over to it. I can imagine how frustrating it would be.
Have you ever bought something and never seen it?
I can imagine.
How is this? We've been trying to get over, but I think the quarantine was like 14 days, and we're like 2 weeks. We got to sit in a hotel, so we're hopeful that again, and I saw there were some announcements even as recent as yesterday that the numbers continue to improve, and we're hopeful to get over there maybe late July, early August, again, provided that we're allowed to based on restrictions and bring my family, so we can't wait to get engaged in the community.
I think it's fair to say. I think it's fair to say if you were to come over in August, not only will you need to bring your hat and scarf and gloves, that you'll be welcome with open arms. Mark, put it that way. I think it's fair to say.
I can't wait. I can't wait. My family is thrilled. My wife has already been online looking at airline tickets and everything, and where should we stay, and doing these virtual walking tours of Ipswich and the town and the stadium and the food in the stadium and what things can we do to improve. And she's got this list for me already. I don't know if your wife's great list for you, but mine does. And so she's like, here's some things you need to work on right away. I'm like, great, honey. I think we'll add that to the list of many things we need to work on right away.
Sounds like you're going to be over for about a month and a half the first time you come.
Exactly. It'll be our summer break from school.
Yeah. So how often do you envisage coming over on a regular basis then, once you are coming over?
I think it'll be quarterly. We'd plan on being there hopefully for the first match of the new season. We plan on coming over for big matches and or playoffs, obviously, that we all plan on in our future, and then regular board meetings and such. So I think from a quarterly basis, and it could be more than that.
And you're getting used to early morning starts to watch Town on iFollow at the moment?
Yes, exactly, which is fantastic. I think it's been a good service. We over here in the States use ESPN Plus to within the States watch Rising matches when they're not on ESPN, and then I've been using iFollow. But as you mentioned earlier, YouTube, you can go on for free to watch Rising games, and I will tell you that the Phoenix Rising people has been equally thrilled about Ipswich and our involvement between the ownership, that they're asking us about buying merchandise. Where do we get that? So Bobby Dooley, the GM of Phoenix Rising, and obviously Mark Ashton with Ipswich have been communicating about helping some of those fans get some merchandise and supporting each other, which again, that's what football is all about. At the root of the beautiful game is to have these clubs that can feel like they have an association. They're not in it alone, that we're all in this together. I think is really, really encouraging that both sides of the pond at Rising and at Ipswich have really welcomed each other with open arms.
Well, that was going to be my question, actually, is the long term, because obviously we've heard rumours about potentially another club down in Australia, but just long term integration between this like matrix of club or portfolio of clubs. What can actually be, what we're looking for, cross pollinated, should we say, between this matrix of clubs that could potentially be in place?
I think you can create an ecosystem, but at this point, I want to be very clear that could be more of a long range goal, right? I think initially for us, it was get our big toe in the water at Phoenix Rising, right? Get that club to the right brand, the right location, the right fan engagement and experience and performance on the pitch. Let's find another opportunity, which again, it took us years to be able to sit here today with you fine gentlemen and talk about Ipswich Town Football Club. I don't think we're going to go rush in. We have work to do. We have to get Ipswich to the point where we're comfortable that they are back to where they were in the former glory. And then at that point, look at where are some other holes that we could fill, possibly in other countries, that might, again, continue to move this concept of a football ecosystem forward.
And part of that possibly maybe players coming from one club to another.
That's right. I mean, I think that's an important part of the game. Didier Drogba is a good example of that, right, with Rising, but so is Solomon Asante, who is our MVP at Phoenix Rising and of the USL Championship for the last 2 years from Ghana, and he's been playing in Phoenix. And so we have a lot of international players in the US, which isn't talked about as much, but as well as obviously in English football, that's pretty common. And so I think it's a matter of continuing to kind of spread those roots out as the trees continue to grow and finding those opportunities that are strategic for all the clubs in this ecosystem. So
in a way, players that, and I'm assuming that the USL is kind of viewed as sort of lower than League One, that a bit of a carrot to players at Phoenix Rising, that if they do well, potentially they could spend time at Town.
That's right, and vice versa, right? Training, international friendlies, coaching staff, hopefully sharing, ideas that they've created that have been successful. We hope for a lot of cross-pollination, and I do think the play is fairly equal between USL Championship and League One. And again, It may vary, and everyone will have an opinion on that. And I probably just sparked 1,000 tweets, but
that's why I was very careful with my eyes.
I do think there's a lot of similarities, but again, from that perspective, that we have work to do at Ipswich Town first. Let me just be very clear about that, and then we'll look at how do we add to the family of football clubs.
I think in terms of, if you're talking about friendlies between clubs, if you can get some sort of corporate partnership with a transatlantic airline, that may help the travel in both regards, might it? Either way.
Help both clubs immensely. I'm with you on that. We may need to start inviting you to our board meetings to help us with some of these concepts.
There's a share certificate there, Mark. I'm more than happy to come and join you.
It looks beautiful. You have to take a picture and send that to me. I'd love to see it. I've not seen one in person yet.
Yeah, we'll do.
Maybe season tickets at the Rising give access to Pullman Road and vice versa.
Yeah, we'd love that. Wouldn't that be fabulous? Especially for a bigger playoff championship, who knows, type of a match. That would be fabulous to try to set something up. We at Phoenix Rising, we had a big Western Conference Championship game against Orange County Soccer Club, and we took care of a tremendous amount of buses, and so we had, gosh, I don't know, maybe a couple thousand Phoenix Rising fans arrive at Orange County, and just was overwhelming the amount of energy that they brought with them. And you can watch the replay on it, but within the first couple minutes, we had scored a goal already, and the other club was sitting there dazed and confused at that point. And I think the same thing could happen, right? If we could bring some Rising fans over to Ipswich, get them to change their red for blue, I think they could bring a lot of energy with them.
Perfect.
That's excellent. Yeah, and we've obviously seen that from the German fans from Fortuna Düsseldorf, so they can play a similar role.
That's right. Well said.
Brilliant. Well, I think we're towards the end of our time, Mark. But thank you, as I say, on behalf of Phil and myself and the Blue Monday guys. Yeah, thank you very, very, very much for your time. Really do appreciate it. And fingers crossed, as you say, we'll see you in 2 or 3 months in August.
I'm looking forward to it, and maybe we'd start something. And I thought about this, and you may think it's a horrible idea, but I was thinking about the way the TWTD. Maybe we look at a concept that these are the days. I don't know. We already did that once.
You already did that.
I missed it. I wasn't tuned in yet.
Phil's already had to rebrand that one, unfortunately.
Okay, well, I don't know, but I'm pretty excited. I couldn't thank you both enough for your kind words, your generous commitment to time and effort and energy for Ipswich Town Football Club. Your love and passion for the club comes through. We're so thankful for that. Hopefully, if we're all in this together, we'll get to where we need to go.
Perfect.
Yes. Amen to that. Thank you very much indeed.
Cheers.
Thank you. Have a good day.
And you.
Thanks for watching or listening to the Blue Monday podcast. And thanks to those of you who have kindly supported the channel via Acast or YouTube donations. You can follow us at the usual places on social media, and don't forget to subscribe so that you get our new shows first.